Hello, thank you very much for having me. My name is Justin Laake, like she said, and I'm with the McKinney Public Library down in Texas. I work as a library technician, and I'm very excited to share the different workflows that we have introduced with Metabase. Uh, and we'll talk a little bit about, it's basically broken down into two parts. First, we'll talk about some of the different features that Metabase has. And then I'll go into a quick little demo, just showing how smooth a lot of the data visualization actually is. And yeah, let's go from there. First off, can I get a show of hands? Is anybody not familiar with databases or how they work or anything like that? No, we've all got a pretty good idea. Oh, that's perfect. But basically, in case anyone online is not familiar with them, databases are kind of broken down into tables, which basically have fields in them. And it's kind of like a spreadsheet to where you can fill in those fields from these different tables. You can join the tables together to combine that data, all that other stuff. So, quick little overview of what we're going to be going over. So first off, what is Metabase? We're going to be going into looking at some of the different tables. We're going to be looking at how you actually make the visualizations. We'll look at the dashboards and subscriptions, also the collections. Finally, we'll be going over the workflow before Metabase, after Metabase, what really even changed with why Metabase. And then we'll go on to some of the hiccups that we had along the way. As well as at the end, we'll have questions, but that's a lie because I'll do the demo right after I cover the cons, and then we can get to the questions. All right, first off, what is Metabase? Metabase is an open source intelligence tool, which is a very fancy way of saying you can plug in data and it makes it look pretty. It's live data collection, which means that it is coming from our live Koha server, but that also means that it's very flexible in that you can basically build the visualization and then you can change the data that it's pulling and it will automatically update. So it's very flexible in that way. You can question your data, which is basically another way of saying query, another way of doing reports, all that other stuff with optional SQL. So you don't have to know SQL in order to get all the fancy things that you want. It also has obviously visualizations. It's got staff-friendly dashboards. So if a lot of your staff are not familiar with data visualization, you can set up basically subscriptions to send out to them regularly so they can be up to date with all the other things. And you can skip cohort reports. I don't know if anybody's not fond of those, but okay. So taking a quick look at the tables, it's got some useful tools that you can use for people that are not familiar with these different tables to basically help describe them, get them up to date with what's going on without having to be hands-on training them. You can change the name of the table that appears inside of Metabase. You can change the description, as well as some tidbits on why the table is interesting. And finally, the things to be aware of for the table. All right, and then you can actually open up the different fields that are within that table. And you can also edit the field name as well as the field type. And just like we were doing for the tables, you can also do that for every single field in the entire database. Do you want to do that? No. But if there is a table and a field that you frequent, that is very useful to have information on hand for. Okay, so moving on to the visualizations, you can build a question, which is basically a report within Metabase. There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. There's a simple way to do it, which is you just pull up the table with all that data and you just start pressing buttons and it gives you something beautiful. You can also do a custom question, which allows you to do things like joins, which is very useful if you're trying to capture multiple data, multiple fields from different data or tables. And you can also do native queries if you just love SQL. So you can also edit existing questions and save them as a new one. It's very flexible in that way. So if you have something that captures the data that you want, but maybe if you want to look at it in a different way, you can do that. It's also got an easy way to join different tables, as well as easy ways to do multi-series visualizations, which I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, so if we wanted to do a simple question, here is the Koha items table. What we're looking at is up in the top right there, that little summarize button. So if you click on that, it will open up an option that you can basically choose what to summarize it by, and you can group it up in different ways. There's also the ability to filter it out. And then once you've got the data that you actually want, down there in the bottom left, it's really small, but it's the visualization button. And that's where the magic happens. You basically get to choose what the visualization is, and you can customize it to however you want it to be using the settings button that's also down there. Then if you wanted to do a custom question, it's going to be that even smaller button up in the top right. And that'll take you to this little, these different fields that you can edit to basically capture whatever you want. And you can always open this up later and build on it from there. Or you can start a simple question and convert it into a custom question back and forth, all which ways. Okay. And here's an example of a fully filled out one with also the ability to create custom columns if you're a lot smarter than me. Okay. And then if you really love SQL, don't strain your eyes. It's not, you don't need to read that. But basically, there are some things that you just can't do easily using the tools that they have available. So for example, in this one, we wanted to capture the different collection codes that we have and put them into larger buckets to make the visualization look a bit better. Because if it's got 50 different colors on the bar graph, it's going to be kind of hard to read. Okay, and another fancy thing that you can do is if you build a like a custom question or a simple question, you can actually look at the SQL that it generates, and you can convert it into a question for SQL and start editing it from there. Is that always useful? Sometimes, if you really want to find out a way that it's doing that. But it also generates it in a way that a machine would. So sometimes that doesn't make sense to my brain, but all right. So visualizations are always very useful if you can look at multiple things at once. And that's where multi-series comes in. So you can pull up, so on this graph right here, what we've got is a count of the new patrons that we have by month. And then we've also broken it down into the different categories for those patrons. So whether they're McKinney residents or if they're county residents. So for example, we can see vast majority of them are going to be McKinney residents all throughout. And then somewhere around 2020, we suddenly had a whole lot of digital accounts. I don't know what's up with that. And then for multi-series, you can also, if you have multiple things from different databases, as long as they share a common access, you can actually bring them together. So here we've got page views from the previous 3 months by week, and the count of issues, which is basically items being checked out by 3 weeks, or 3 months by week. And then, now please hold your applause. There's 2 lines on a graph now. Now, may not seem like much, but this was something that we were very looking forward to whenever we were working with Metabase, because these are from 2 different databases. So just the possibilities for things that you can do with this, you can see if you get it set up correctly, you can have like programming attendance as well as circulation at that time. You can see just a whole bunch of different stuff that we're very excited to hopefully get working in the future. It also has this feature called X-ray. So if you are looking at a certain table, you can start X-raying the data, which generates summaries and visualizations automatically. So it's right there. You can just click that button and it will automatically generate a bunch of reports that it may think are useful. Are they always useful? You can see right here, you know, return claims by borrower number is not the most useful statistic, but if you look down there in the bottom right, it's a return claim per resolution. So basically breaking down the claims returned by how it was resolved, which could be actually very useful. And what you can do is you can just click on that visualization right there and start editing it to what you specifically want it to do, which is one of the big bonuses to using X-Ray. Here's some more examples, and it's just breaking them down by time now. Dashboards. So you can build all of these questions, and obviously you want to show them next to each other, which is where dashboards come in. Here is one example that they have up on their website. And here is one of my test dashboards. Don't worry, not all of them look like that. And with dashboards also comes subscriptions. So you can set it up to where it will regularly email you any changes that happen within those dashboards. So say if you want to see what the circulation is for every week, it will automatically send you that update. If you want to see what any changes are, you can base it on time or some of the other things that we can take a look at later. This was another big thing that we were looking for with Metabase is public dashboards. Transparency is a big part of the a citywide thing for McKinney, and we wanted to be able to share some of the different statistics that we have to our public. And we were finally able to do that with Metabase. This is the actual public dashboard that we have set up to where we can show everybody that's how many people have used the collection today, how many people have borrowed items this month, break it down, how many books we have in circulation, all that other stuff. Finally, collections. It's basically just a fancy word for folders, and you can organize it by whose it is, which like location. For example, we have over there on the left side, we have data for Hall, which is one of our branches, and then the other one's for JJG. It's just a useful way to organize the different questions that you have. So why Metabase? So here's some examples of differences that we found between Metabase and Excel. Metabase is just a lot faster. Just the whole process beginning to end is very convenient. I had Marcy, who is in charge of building our adult collections, asked me, you know, we changed where these new books are. Can you show me exactly like if the circulation for those changed at all? And I was able to throw together an entire dashboard within an hour, where it might have taken me maybe a couple of days in using Koha reports and Excel. There's no SQL barrier. There's definitely a learning scale whenever it comes to Excel, because you both have to know SQL and you have to be able to build those visualizations within Excel using pivot charts, pivot tables, or anything like that. So thankfully, it's a lot lower barrier. And Metabase is an all-in-one solution as compared to Excel, which is just one part because you still have to deal with all of the Koha reporting. And finally, a big bonus is subscriptions for Metabase, where for Excel, you have to manually do it every time. Oh, I'll go back. There we go. So this is basically just showing what our workflow was before, which we had to obviously write the SQL into Koha reports. If you're like me, you have to do that about 10 times before you get what you want. Then you run the report, download the file, you gotta clean it if needed. For me, that's all the time. Create the different tables and graphs in Excel. But if you finally get to the end and you didn't get everything that you wanted, gotta get right back to the beginning. With Metabase though, you just have to select the database that you're looking at, as well as the tables, join, filter, group them, all that other stuff. You just press visualize and graph it, customize it to how you want it to look. And then if you didn't capture everything, you can just change the report that it pulls from and it automatically updates the graphs. Now, here's some of the hiccups that we had. So there are some features that are behind a paywall. We were really looking for white labeling, which is to be able to add our custom logos and colors to the different dashboards that we have. Unfortunately, that's a $500 a month minimum. It's a little over budget for us, but There's also some other things like advanced embedding, which I think goes into custom, like things outside of online stuff. Granular data access audit logs and more fancy stuff that we didn't really need. Hosting for your organization may be at the mercy of IT. That's one of the issues that we were running into. So at first, our plan was to have IT host the Metabase server for us, and we were basically going to have to pitch it to them and hope, cross our fingers, that they actually agreed with us that this is a tool that we needed. But thankfully, we were able to get help from Bywater. They were already an approved vendor, so we just had to ask them politely and slip them a few dollars, and there we go. One of the smaller nitpicky things is only the older version of Google Analytics. This is going to probably be a much bigger problem whenever they stop actually doing the older version of Google Analytics entirely, which is June or July next year. So hope that gets fixed. There's only one database per report, and this is also kind of a nitpicky thing, but you can show the different databases on the same dashboard like I showed you earlier. And this is pretty much for every software ever, but hiccups happen, and you sometimes have to wait for an update for those to be able to be fixed. I know, for example, we had the emailed subscriptions. Sometimes if it doesn't like the graph, it'll like throw a tantrum and throw a bunch of straight lines all over the graph in random directions. It's very funny though. All right, so this is a lie. There's no questions just yet because I'm going to pop into Metabase here. How am I looking for time? Doing pretty good. There we go. Okay. So let's take a look at the tables because that's where all the magic happens. We just go to Browse Data. So we've got our Koha server right here. And here is a reduced list of the different tables within Koha. The one that we're wanting to look at right now is going to be items. So I'll show you the learn about, which is the first thing that I showed on the presentation. So let's see. We've got obviously the tabs that I showed you before. You can also see the fields and you can actually edit it. So why don't we do that right now? Because I was never a big fan of C code because I didn't know what it meant for the longest time. So why don't we find that? If I can. There it is. So maybe we want to rename it to something a little better, to collection code. Or category code. I don't know what it actually is, but that seems good enough for me. All right, so let's just save that. And now that doesn't actually change it in Koha, so don't worry about that. It is only on the Metabase side that it changes that. So now we can see whenever it shows a C code field, it will instead show the collection code. So that definitely helps for readability for some of the different things that you might not know about. Okay, so then let's move on. So if we go here, let's take a look at this table. All right, so from here, you can see, obviously, we've got the different rows and columns inside of the database. It just captures a couple of the first ones that it sees all the way back to 1997. All right, so if we wanted to start making a visualization, all you got to do is hit summarize right here, and it'll give you some options. So we do want to summarize by the count of rows, and then let's just go with grouping them by the date they were accessioned. Let's do that by month. Okay, so it pops up and somehow we have a book all the way back, 4 books from 1899. That's a very small amount. So why don't we go ahead and filter those out? So maybe we want things that have been accessioned in the past year. Let's do that. There we go. That's looking a lot more readable. Okay, so this is just showing the number of items in each one of these months that we have added to our collection. And what else can we do to this? Let's see. In the visualization options, here's where it's going to give you the different things that you can change it to. So if we want it to be a bar graph, we can do that. Maybe we want to do a waterfall, although it's only going up, so maybe that's not the best one. All right, let's go with the bar graph. And we get some different options. So you can change some of the different things in relation to the axes. You can change how they look for that. This is more useful for multi-series ones. So let's just don't stack them. You can change some of these. For example, you can change y-axis to be logarithmic. I don't think we're going to do that. But I don't really like how it's date accessioned all one word for the bottom there. So let's just do date added. There we go. So that looks to be a great new addition. So new question. I can barely see the key. Oh yeah, I misspelled that. I can barely see the keyboard, so please forgive my spelling. Here we go. All right, so let's just save that in my collection. Oh, hey, very convenient. Very cool Metabase demo stuff. You know what? I do want to add this to a dashboard. Thank you, Metabase. All right, let's go back into here. Let's just create a new dashboard right in there. Very cool stuff in here. All right. So we've got a new dashboard all set up with the new question that we just had. Let's stretch that out a little bit. And let's move on to the next one. So if we wanted to, let's go and do a custom question. So why don't I just search for the statistics table? Statistics, that's the table that I'm looking for. Okay, so this table basically shows us in different rows whether an item's been checked out, whether it's been returned, a local use, or renewed, stuff like that. So why don't we open up the editor here and do a join for this. So I want to join statistics to, let's just type that. I want to do items. Do that. And it makes joining very easy because you can just select the columns that you're wanting to combine them on. So item number seems like something that'd be in both. Oh, look at that. There we go. So we've got the item number and and let's just go ahead and start visualizing that. There we go. Let's filter based on date accession. Let's just do 12 months again. We also want to only do, let's only do checkouts. Didn't like that. This is a perfect time to get up, stretch your legs, you know, get some water in you. Here we are. All right. And finally, last one, I promise. Let's do date time, last 12 months as well. Okay. Let's go back in here and let's summarize it. Let's do a count of rows grouped by date time. Let's do by month. Got all that. So let's start visualizing it. My favorite part of Metabase is whenever I get into a lot of these and it starts loading for a long time, I get to take my break and still say I'm working. There we go. All right. So we can also add another grouping. So let's break this down by branch. So if we go back into summarize, we can add a grouping for branch. And I know this one's probably going to take a while. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a count of the issues. So basically items being checked out at the 2 different branches based on the date time, and only items in the last 12 months that have been added. So let's go ahead and save that. You read my mind? Yes, I do. There we go. Joining all the other cool stuff that we have. All right. So let's go ahead and save that. Nice little graph down there. Let's take a quick look at the SQL that we did for the circulation by collection grouping. There we are. So this is the one that I pointed out earlier that we had written in SQL. It's going to have all of the different collections that we have basically grouped up into buckets. And we did that using the basically code that we had already written for SQL before. So we just copy pasted it, did all of the selections that we wanted, and boom. There we are. So using SQL, we were able to basically break down a whole bunch of different collection codes into only picture books, adult fiction, movies, stuff like that. And you can always look at the SQL right there. You can also have some useful buttons over here on the right side. So you can learn about the table that you're in case you wanted to actually select things. You've got variables and SQL snippets that you can add. And there, of course, is where it's all throwing those things into buckets right there. Sorry, I just wanted to show that off. All right. So looking at multi-series stuff, let's go to this one that I have. Test. Dash. Here we are. So this is the same graph that I was showing you earlier, and I just wanted to show you how easily you can add on multiple series onto a dashboard. So we've got this graph right here. So if we just edit it, there's this neat little button that you can change the visualization options from right here, so you don't got to go back to that single question. Click behavior, and here we are, add series. So let's add that. So as soon as we click on that, it'll bring up an entire list of a whole bunch of different questions that may or may not fit onto this. And it will give you a warning that it thinks that it's not compatible just because some of these are not going to have a time on the x-axis. So let's find one that does. And I cheated because I wrote it down earlier. So let's go with count of issues. There we are. So you just get to the exact one that you want, click on it. And there we are. Please hold your applause. I said hold it? Okay, there we go. All right. Then we can save that and we are good to go. Let's go check out some of the x-rays because that's one of the fancy things that I loved whenever I was first doing it. Okay, koha. Then let's take a look at maybe suggestions. Okay, so on any single one of these tables, it's going to have this x-ray button. So we just got to click on it right there. And it will immediately start generating some different summaries. So we've got 4,000 suggestions, 30 suggestions in the past 30 days. Some things that maybe are not too useful for us. And then we'll start getting into some different visualizations and stuff like that. All right. It also shows geographic data. I don't think it goes down to zip codes, which is something that we were really hoping for. But if you want to show stuff across the United States or across different countries and stuff, it's also very useful for that. All right. So I was really liking the suggestions added in the last 30 days. So if you just click on it, it will immediately take you to that, the question that it had generated for that, and you can edit it to however you want it to be. Let's see what we can do. Let's try doing visualization. Let's try doing a progress bar. And maybe our goal for the amount of suggestions that we want in the past 30 days to be 200 items. So we can show exactly how close we are to the goal, and you can set that up to where it sends it to you every month to see whether or not you hit that goal or something along those lines. So, okay, let's save that, add it to the same spot. All right, now you're just getting pushy. All right, then let's go back to the suggestions table and start x-raying it again. All right, so now if you scroll down past all of these, you can actually do show more about this. And this will just start generating a whole ton more that you can browse from. And it's basically just a way for you to dig deeper and for it to show you just throw a whole lot of darts at the board to see what lands. And let's see. I think the one that was most useful is suggestions per status, and I'm not going to wait for it to load. There we go. So this one was one that it automatically generated, and it shows basically which purchase suggestions from patrons that have already been checked, which ones have been rejected, which ones have been accepted. I don't know entirely how accurate this is because we do accept a whole lot of patron suggestions. So don't let this sully your view of the McKinney Public Library. But I really like that. So why don't we go ahead and add that? Oh. There we are. Okay. So we are finally back to this dashboard and we can just move things around. Maybe I don't like the color green for that one. So let's just change that to purple. Can do that all from here. We can move them around, resize them, all that stuff. And one of the things that we loved the most, so if we save that, pretty sure that's the share button. So we can actually enable sharing for this. You just got to click that, take this link and put it wherever you wanted your public dashboards to be, where it can be available for your patrons and everything like that. I changed my mind. There we go. go back here, and then we can also set up a subscription just in case, since this was in the past like 12 months and also within the last 30 days, you can set it to whatever you want it to be. So you can change whose it's going to. You can change how often it is sent. You can also change it to where if there aren't anything new that's actually added, it won't send you anything. And it can also send you an attachment for all of the results. All right, let me see if we have anything else. I think we've got a few minutes, so maybe I just show off the Google Analytics that we were able to add. So for Google Analytics, like I mentioned earlier, you can connect it into Metabase. And we were able to connect it using Aspen Discovery. So now if we click on that, McKinney Public Library, we can pull up some different data that's within Google Analytics and potentially even add it to dashboards that are right next to stuff from Koha. And I'm not going to dig too deep into this because it still scares me. It does have a different way of doing it because I believe Google Analytics doesn't necessarily use SQL, or maybe it uses a different kind, but it will automatically add these fields in, and you can change it by date and basically summarize those that way. I've not messed around with it enough, but look at all those. It's kind of intimidating. All right, so now let's go back here. That started from right there. Yes. Okay. Finally, now is the part for questions. And also, if you don't think of anything right now and want to contact me later, you can see my email address right there at the bottom. It's just jlaake@mckinneytexas.org. So are there any questions? Oh, yeah, you got the.
Thanks. Great presentation. Sorry, that's really loud. Have maybe a couple questions.
Mhm.
I guess the first thing that was coming to mind is it looks really complex. So is there a pretty good community as far as figuring out what all of their labels mean, where you should be looking, or do you feel like you're kind of just waiting and finding the stuff that fits?
For me personally, it was kind of waiting because I do enjoy kind of going in and figuring these kinds of things out. I would hope that Koha does have a whole lot of documentation on what all of these fields are and what they mean and what they're used for. So you could use that. But if you're looking for Metabase specific stuff, I do know that they do have some pretty good documentation as well.
As far as sharing the data,
Mhm.
It looked like you can embed things with like iframes
Mhm.
as well. When you share out the emails and it said something about attachments, what are they getting? There's like a PDF of the dashboard.
I am not 100%
Okay.
sure. I would guess a picture
Okay.
is my best guess,
Gotcha.
but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it. And you said that you're contracting with Bywater to
Yes,
server.
Bywater is running and hosting it for us.
I guess that was my other question. What kind of stipulation? I wasn't going to ask price, but the stipulation, are you doing this by like seat license for access? Can you hit all of your branches, as many as you want, and keep adding them? Do you know?
That was way above my pay grade.
Okay. We'll ask Bywater.
Oh yeah, it's
right.
definitely a good question to ask them, and
Okay.
I'm sure that's all part of contracts and
Cool.
stuff like that.
Oh,
Oh,
sweet.
perfect.
Like it.
He said there's no limit and they can do whatever they want.
There you go.
Can you give me some buzzwords I can convince IT with to like host it and stuff? Because I need it.
Oh boy. Let's see. I think the open source it was a intelligence tool. Intelligence tool is a very fancy sounding thing for sure. Yeah, free is a big one. No licensing costs unless you really want to get into that. Let's see. I don't know if open source really rings their bell or not, but what else is there? I think the flexibility of it is also great. That's one of the things that I've loved a whole bunch, and just being able to do things more efficiently, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
There's a comment here on the YouTube feed about buzzwords to use with your IT department. Enhancing communication with decision makers and stakeholders.
That sounds beautiful.
Another one?
Look you back up a little bit towards the beginning. You said that when you installed it, or when you want to install it, you may be at the mercy of your IT department. I work in a hospital library. A few years ago, we were on the front page of an awful lot of tech journals because we had to shut down the system for all 9 hospitals due to some unpleasantness. And they were paranoid before, and they're even more paranoid now. And we are a library, so we were at the very bottom of their priority list, which is quite understandable. And some of the people we have dealt with to try to get some enhancements for our residents don't seem to really grasp the idea of what a library is. So a lot of what we do, most of what we do is in spite of them. We just do it and hope they don't find out about it. Took a while for them to realize we had our own server in the library. And when that server got kind of old, we moved it to a cloud server. And there's a firewall, so users cannot get into it outside the hospital network. I have an odd situation. Now, my question is, I really do have a question. What do you need to run this on? I mean, does it need its own dedicated server? Could it run on port 81 of our koha server, which is somewhere in New York?
I don't know all of the specifics really, but I do know that Ed Veal, he kind of runs one of our branches. He was able to get a demo up and running on a laptop. So I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be feasible or not, but I do know that he was able to get it up and running very quickly. So you might just see what you have available and see if you can get it running on there. And yeah, I would definitely check out the documentation and stuff like that to see if it's something that you can do.
Okay, actually, I've got a server in my basement I can install it on.
That's the best place where they won't find it.
Hi, do you know how this compares to Power BI?
I have not used Power BI. I have used Tableau, if that's of any use. It is a lot more simple than Tableau, I would say, because obviously with Tableau, you kind of got to drag the things that you need up there and mess with it until you can get what you're looking for. With this, I've found that instead of trying to get what I wanted, I can guide it a bit more, but it's also a lot simpler. So it's kind of limited in what you can do with it. But sorry, I haven't used Power BI.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry, Justin, you mentioned you could share it like a URL. Are you pushing that information out to patrons at all, like on the OPAC, or how are you sharing any data in that way with the patrons or?
Yes. So actually, I might be able to pull it up right on here. That lets me leave. There we go. It lets me get a new tab. There we go. So let's go to our OPAC really quickly. Oh. There we go. That looks good. Okay, so if we go to our catalog, we've got a button right up here at the top for statistics. And anybody that wants to can just click on that. And Metabase will generate the page and everything, and that's where you can see all of the different statistics that we have available.
Any other questions? Oh, just a moment.
There's one last buzzword comment from Joy Nelson. She says, try business intelligence and optimization.
Man, they are so much better than I am. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time and coming out here and being able to let me share this.